back, everyone. As I told you earlier in the show, our next guest inspired and touched my whole family with his story when we met him recently in Chicago, when we were seeing patients at the Northwestern Brain Tumor Institute. PJ Lukac is a 24-year-old medical student who turned his own diagnosis of brain cancer into a mission to find treatment. Here's a clip of PJ, just a little part of his story before he comes out.
I'm first.
One day I was playing squash with my friend, and I was really out of breath. And then, like, all of a sudden, I had this song stuck in my head, and I knew the song really well. It was like deja vu, but I couldn't make out the tune or the lyrics. My stomach dropped, and then I'd be confused for a couple minutes. This happened like once every week to 10 days.
I'm like, well, you know, why don't you go see somebody there? You're in medical school. No, no, no. I think I'm going crazy. I think I'm becoming schizophrenic.
Then my mom made me see a neurologist. My parents were in the waiting room, and I had like tears streaming down my face, and I opened the door.
Take this picture to my grave. He's just standing in the doorway framed and tears rolling down his cheeks, and he said, I have a brain tumor.
I was in the OR. The next thing I know, I woke up and I was being pushed down the hallway. And I remember being shocked that I could speak perfectly. And he goes, yeah, I think we got it all.
So then, you know, you have to wait 5 or 6 days for the pathology. Okay, so we can deal with this. It's gone now, right? It's all going to be gone. It won't be the worst. It won't be a GBM. It'll be something else.
And Dr. Chandler came in. It looks like you have a stage 4 glioblastoma. And then I put my head in my hand again. I'm like, oh, this is bad.
I'm so grateful PJ is here today to share his story with all of you. Please welcome PJ Lukac to our show. PJ, you know, with so many things like this, when people see it, you know, sometimes we don't even want to listen, we don't want to look, we don't want to hear, because you think human nature is, what if that were my son? What if it were me? What if it were somebody I loved? And your life, when this happened, take us to before the diagnosis. What were you doing?
Okay, I was headed through my second year of medical school at Columbia University in New York. And, you know, I was busy studying, and I was stressed out all the time and tired all the time. And it just got to the point where I started having these strange symptoms that they described on the video. And I kind of just dismissed it at first. I thought, this is just medical school, you know, it's tough. And then it just slowly got worse to the point where my mom literally forced me to see a doctor.
Didn't you originally see a doctor and he said it is kind of the stress of medical school? You probably just have put a lot of pressure on yourself?
When I saw my family doctor at first, he thought maybe it was an anxiety issue, which is difficult for a patient to hear, because then you're sort of reticent to go into detail with the doctor. So
yeah, you don't, and that's a really valuable lesson, is that when you're in the doctor's office, it's your time. You have to be your own advocate.
Even as a medical student,
I know.
I really withheld some of the symptoms that I was having just because it sounded so strange. And you know, I really didn't want to see doctors. It's something that my mom really pushed me into, which fortunately was the case.
So when your family's going through this journey, when it first happens and you get diagnosed, and just so the audience knows at home, you want to explain what a glioblastoma is? Sure.
Obviously every cancer is staged, stage 1 through 4, stage 4 being the worst. And a glioblastoma is a stage 4 brain cancer. And basically the features of it are that it grows really quickly and it tends to spread throughout your brain. So it's kind of difficult to get it all at once. You know, you can say that in a surgery you remove everything you can see, but there's also these kind of loose cells that, you know, these stray cells that will eventually grow back. Not always is the case, but more often than not.
So on the video, you're talking about finding out that you have a glioblastoma, and you just fall apart completely, and you're in the waiting room and there's strangers around and everything else. And you talk about seeing your dad.
At that point, I didn't know it was a glioblastoma. So I opened the waiting room to see my parents, and the waiting room was full of people. And I was inconsolable. So I brought my parents back, and you know, I curled up in this chair, and I obviously was just crying. I was bawling. And I looked at my dad and I said, Dad, I'm gonna die. And he looked at me, just this, I can't even describe his face. It was just scrunched up. and he just rubbed my head, and my mom was on the phone. She jumped into mom mode. She was like all over the doctor. She knew what to ask. But it was obviously just a shock. It's like I went from being this, you know, the prime of my life. I was just about to become a doctor, and then this happened, you know.
And
came out of nowhere.
And you're overwhelmed, and it's devastating.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point, you say that you get familiar, that familiar look in people's faces when they come towards you, like they're feeling so sorry for you, or the pity. And this kind of drives you to say, I'm going to face this a different way.
Any brain cancer really is a scary disease for people. It's like you're messing with this very, very vital part of a person. And so oftentimes people are scared of this disease. And it's really a process of just people getting used to that, and you know, it's not the death sentence that they make it out to be. People are doing really well. I know lots of people that are doing really well, and we're making big strides.
But what happened is that you actually make a decision to go to the lab and apply for a job researching this particular.
Yeah, I was bored out of my mind living with my parents at home. I felt like I was in high school again. So naturally, I wanted to do something scientific, and I'm a medical student, so I tracked down this lab, or actually I spoke to my doctor first, and she's like, you know, what kind of lab do you want to work in? I'm like, might as well do a brain tumor lab. It seems kind of like a natural progression since I have one. And she's like, you sure you want to do that? I'm like, yeah, why not? And so I started up in the lab, and in this particular lab, Dr. Riddell's lab at Northwestern, we've made some actually big strides.
Yes.
And it's meant a great deal to me.
When we come back, PJ will tell us how he is unlocking the science behind the very cancer that he has himself, and we'll be back with his doctor, Dr. Jeffrey Razor. Stay tuned.